Hey there, super friends. It's Kev, and before we start this week's episode, I just want to take a minute and share thoughts and prayers, or whatever it is that you share in times of grief and times of tragedy, to a couple of things that happened down in Orlando this past weekend and earlier this week. Obviously on Friday, Christina Grimmie was killed, and it's a shame. As each one of these things that I'm going to talk about, like it's you can connect to in some way. They all are just a tragic event. As someone who is I'm assuming most people listen to the show as a young person, but as anyone that's just a person that just wants to go about their life and create art or whatever it is they do. Like, yeah, it's just a reminder you have to constantly think of your own safety and whatnot, and to have to deal that at such a young age, while you're, just wanting to create art is hard to do, and it's just shitty. Same thing as an American, the Pulse nightclub, the victims, large mass shooting there, and just a very sad event that happened, and of course, maybe, I don't know if this is lesser known, it just happened, I read about it yesterday, the 2-year-old, and this one I connect to, a little bit more because I have children myself, and one of them is 2 years old, and we've gone to Disney World, and a gator grabbing the 2-year-old kid is absolutely heartbreaking as well. It's all heartbreaking. Everything's heartbreaking. I mean, each thing's going to connect to people differently, obviously, and then for me, it's the gator grabbing the kid. It's just a very scary, very real thing. And it's just all shitty. It's a shitty time for the Orlando area and for just people in general. So anything you can do, to just share positive vibes, however you do that, thoughts, prayers, whatever it is, send them out to the families of these victims. They certainly need it right now. If you want to support in any other way, I know at least 2 of them have some sort of fund me type of campaign going on. So you can go to gofundme.com/Christina Grimmie, to help her family, through this time of unexpected funeral, which is very expensive and all that. And of course the Pulse victims, there's a official GoFundMe for that as well. GoFundMe.com/Pulse Victims Fund, I believe is the URL. You're all very smart, all the super friends out there. You can figure it out by Googling it, and I'll use your best judgment as to which one's official and whatnot. Those URLs should be correct though. And if you have some scratch, go, please donate, to this cause. Skip McDonald's or whatever is your advice, and skip that for the day, and maybe send that money towards one of those causes instead. All right. Thanks for listening, and we're going to get on with the show. I just wanted to share thoughts and stuff very quickly with you guys.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No. You're awesome.
No. You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. This week's guest is one of those guests where, I'm going to learn everything that you're going to learn with you, because I did, as per usual, no research. But this is one of my favorite type of interviews because it's one where we kind of have a mutual friend, But really, the way we met is kind of something that I discovered while doing this podcast over the last couple of weeks and months. Is that the podcasting, community is just such a tight-knit group, and kind of going full into the local chapter of podcasting societies, I guess, the Philadelphia Podcasting Society, is where I first saw some tweets, or not tweets, that's Facebook. God damn it. I first saw some posts from this week's guest who hosts the podcast Full Belly Laughs. And I think the official thing that happened is he posted something about cross promotion, and I'm a big proponent of cross promotion. So like I instantly commented, said, "Yo, let's do it. I don't care what we do, let's do it." And to make a long story short, that's the Philadelphia Podcasting Society and other podcasting groups that I belong to. Proves that the podcasting community is probably the one of the coolest communities to be part of. And I'm sure that this week's guest is just as cool, if not cooler, than everyone else that we've ever talked to here on Everything is Awesome. Please welcome Brian. I'm going to not screw up your last name, Durkin?
That is correct. Thank you.
Booyah, yes.
Yeah, good job, Kev. Oh man, thank you. We're so tight in the Philly podcast community. We can guess each other's last names.
Yes. I'm a terrible English student, if you will. I have trouble. I think my mind works faster than I want to speak. So, or maybe it's the other way. I speak faster than my mind works. Whatever it is, I trip over words quite often, and last names especially. Like if it's like yours is kind of easy. It's right there. You put it on Front Street.
Yeah, I put it all out there. That's how I do.
So, yeah. So we were just talking before we started the show about how we have Garrett is a mutual friend of ours. Garrett, for those that don't remember, was our first ever guest here. Yes, Garrett Smith, who is a real funny dude. I haven't caught any of his stand-up comedy yet. I've caught a couple of his I Like to Movie shows, which I'm a huge fan of. But him and so the way Garrett and I met was I've been podcasting for like 10 years now, or almost 10 years.
Oh, wow, awesome.
Yeah, I remember that. So I think one of like our first real interactions on the Podcast Society was me posting our 10th episode, which was celebrating failure. And as we discussed before we started recording today, just a lot of things went wrong with 4 interviews that I recorded. Mm-hmm. And you had posted something about like, oh yeah, we've all been there, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just smiled because like I shouldn't be making those mistakes 10 years in, but I still do.
Yeah, I mean, there's some... With anything that's, from what I've learned from my event coordinating experience, is that the best managers of live situations are able to put out fires and then adjust to like the unexpected. Like there's, you can sit there and think of every risk that could possibly happen, and then like my third episode, or no, the second episode I ever recorded for my show, I lost the second half and had to re-record it. Because I just totally blanked and forgot that I had recorded like a practice episode with like my girlfriend and a couple of our friends, and my memory card was full. And the way that I had my recording set up, like I couldn't see the screen of like my recorder to say that it was full.
Okay.
Like the blessing in disguise was that my show has like a natural break at like the half-hour mark, and that's when it filled up. So it was perfect.
Good.
It was perfect. Like, oh, can we just do that segment again? Because that's apparently where it cut us off. So yeah, it was. But yeah, you're right. There's always hurdles that you didn't even see coming. You have to get over.
Well, and so for me, like this is my, I guess this will end up being around episode 19 or 20, I think, when it's all said and done. 18 is what it says in front of me, so we'll go with that, episode 18.
Oh, cool.
Which will be like, so we're in mid-June now ish. So people listening, so we're like just kind of getting into the summer season and whatnot. But this is like my first long form interview show. Like everything else I've ever done has been more radio centric. So like I've like where we had those natural breaks like you did. So I used to record a lot of 2-hour shows,
Sure.
and we do like 15-minute segments, a 5-minute break. It was very, I wouldn't say very produced, because at some point after my first real podcast, we still podcasted, but what we ended up doing really was going live stream eventually. I don't know if you are familiar with the site Stickcam.
I am not. No.
Okay, so that they don't exist anymore.
Okay.
But they were before, like, I guess Twitch is like the biggest live streamer now.
Sure. Yeah.
But we'll go. Let's see. It's probably been about over 6 years since I think Stickcam shut down about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. But I started live streaming probably 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
And Stickcam was like, basically there was like YouTube for pre-recorded videos and Stickcam for live streams. I think Ustream was around and Blog TV maybe, but to me it always seemed like all the traffic was going to Stickcam. And for years we were in that format of like, let's just go live. Like you mentioned earlier, that's one of the things that like, okay, yes, 4 interviews, about 5.5, 6.5 hours of my life wasted, was, you know, a horrible train wreck. But that live experience I have kind of kicked into gear. I was like, all right, well, I can make a show out of this still.
Sure, yeah.
And and so you're right. Like I think live streaming and the one live podcast we ever did in a bar, like that's kind of where all my experience is. So going to this long form interview format is like a whole new learning experience, especially if you've ever, and I know you haven't, but like anyone that follows this show probably followed my past stuff. I'm a horrible interviewer. Like I'm not like my first ever interview. Have you ever heard of Fat Baby Leg?
Fat Baby Leg?
Fat Baby Leg.
Oh, Fat Baby Leg. No.
He was on this show. It was on NBC, and it was like American Idol and like America's Got Talent, but I don't think it was any of that. It was on NBC over 10 years ago at this point.
The X Factor?
No, it wasn't X Factor.
The Voice?
It was
So you think you can dance?
No, because it was it was more like America's Got Talent, where you could have any talent. And maybe that's been around long enough that it was that show, but I don't think it was. It was a show of that nature. That's not the important part. Maybe.
Okay.
But so this dude, he sang like he was a parody guy, kind of like he did original stuff, but it was all comedy. So like he sang this song called Christopher Columbus, and if I could find it, I will cut it into this show, or at least a little bit of it. And I knew of him from Kid Chris. I don't know if you were a Kid Chris fan back in the day.
Yeah, like the Shock Jock, right?
Yes. So
Yes.
so. And that's the type of radio that's what I was into 10 years ago. I was, my humor was very different 10, 15 years ago because I grew up. I don't want to say grew up, but my early, I would say I'm again, the no research. I'm taking a wild stab that you are a stand-up comedian as well as a podcaster, correct?
I am, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I am a jack of all trades. I do stand-up. I've done improv. I'm a podcaster.
We'll talk improv later.
Yeah. So, and I'm starting to dip my hands into sketch because I'm a writer by trade, so it's kind of silly for me to not try that. So yeah. So if it can be funny, I will try that medium.
So so that was like my humor was geared towards Shock Jock, and Kid Chris to me was always like the next Howard Stern. He just got fired before he could really do that.
Yeah, no, I remember him being on when I was younger, and I was just I think at the right time in my life and the right age to be really into him, and he was just doing really fun. He was doing interactive stuff with his listeners. Before that was a no-brainer move to do if you want to like be on social media. You know what I mean? Like this was like before
totally.
like social media. You know, like just that whole like he would, for people that don't remember him, at least this is the segment that sticks with me. Like at the end of his shows, he'd have this thing called like graffiti.
Yes.
And it was just like a voicemail box, and they would just play like clips of whatever anyone left as the voicemail. And like, you know, that's the equivalent, like to me, like nowadays, that's like when you get your tweet read, like on a TV show, on a radio show, you know, like those kind of shout outs are so cool and so much fun. And yeah, that really drew me to the show. Like I remember that to this day, you know.
And you know what's funny? Until you mentioned that, like I never really equated to like Kid Chris kind of being maybe one of the, at least in our area, like one of the first people to like embrace what new media is. And he wasn't doing new media by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he was a radio show, but yeah, I mean, he may not have been the first, but like I at least, you know, hit the search button on my car dashboard and stumbled upon his show, and like that was like my introduction to like, oh, like the content that I'm absorbing can be like participatory, you know?
Yes. He because something a theme of this show, or a theme of me doing podcasting at the very least, is like very pro indie and very pro new media. And something that we've talked about with previous guests is like in this world, you have to be to succeed, like you have to interact with your followers, you know, whether that be social media or doing a live broadcast or whatever it is. Like you have to be very interactive. And you know, I never really thought of Kid Chris as that guy, but he totally was. He was one of the most interactive DJs or shock jocks or whatever that I, even during like the free FM years of YSP and like when talk radio was huge here, he was kind of like the only one kind of embracing the listeners. You know, Stern, you know, obviously did, or at least his crew did. But as a Philly guy, and here's the one thing I love about Kid Chris still is that he's doing radio out in, I think, it's either somewhere in Texas or somewhere in Midwest.
Yeah, I don't know where I remember looking up where he moved to after he got fired and left Philly, but then again, like that could have happened to him again. Like he, you know what I mean? Like Texas sounds familiar to me, but he could have lost that job and be in like a new town now. You know, like
since he left Philly, he's in at least a second town. So like he went from Philly to I think, well, he did podcasting for a while because he was still under contract when he got fired from Philly. So he couldn't do anything on regular radio, but he was able to do podcasting.
Oh, okay.
And I think he did that out of Texas. And then he went to, I believe, Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
And then he went somewhere else and maybe one other place. And I've really kind of like have not kept, once he moved to the third time, I kind of stopped keeping tabs on him. But the one thing, like every now and then, like I'll see it somewhere on Twitter or something, like he very much considers, I think, Philly a second home to him. Like he's a Flyers fan. He really digs like the way the Philly listeners were. I think the Philly listeners are his biggest audience to follow him from place to place because Philly was his first big market. This is a long way of saying that, like, for like guys like you and Garrett, I imagine you have like stand-up comedians that kind of informed you. For me, it was like Kid Chris and Stern and whatnot. And that's eventually changed to like now more like I consider more of Kevin Smith, like a muse for me. And like Aisha Tyler, like these guys
nowadays or Kevin Smith?
Yeah. I've always been a Kevin Smith. In fact, Garrett and I, we hosted probably the best podcast in the world that lasted a few weeks. Monday Pod. Okay. I don't know how much into Kevin Smith you are, but he runs a podcast network called Smodcast.
Okay.
So we literally sat around and talked about Kevin Smith and his podcast network for an hour a week. It was we rebranded after a couple months.
Sure.
But that was like so Oh God, we're all over the place already. So radio was kind of like my muse, and now it's more so like Kevin Smith. Like now I realized in my mid to late 20s, which was a couple of years ago, going on 5 or 6 years now, that I want to be like a writer director.
Okay.
So now, and of course, like I realized that like probably about a year or two before I had my first kid.
Yeah.
So like it's all difficult.
Perfect time.
Yeah, perfect timing. So like you can't take that leap. Like that's a leap you can't take when at least when the kids are young.
Yeah.
But like so very much so like I'm in that same kind of world where like you want to enter sketch comedy. I'm doing it on the YouTube, or at least I want to. Like we have a bunch of stuff written, one thing recorded from 5 years ago, and we produced a bunch. Podcasting's always been my one true love. Like if you can't tell, I love to talk.
No, not at all. I've had to fill a lot of time, so I thought you didn't like to talk at all.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's so. No, I it's funny. I recently got into I'm very new to podcasting in a way. I hope I'm not like ruining my street cred. But yeah, we're I guess we'll have like almost as many episodes as you. I think like yeah, we released it at like the beginning of February, and it's been like every Tuesday since. So I'm not sure how many weeks.
Oh, okay.
I'm not good at like calendar math, but
yeah, no one is.
It's like it's approaching 20 if it's not at 20. And then I only started listening to podcasts like a little over a year ago. So
oh wow.
Yeah, so but I just dove really in. Like at the time I was working this job that I just really didn't like at all, and I had to start going to the office more, and the commute was miserable. It was like it was over 2 hours each way.
Oh.
Yeah, and like I hated all the music on my playlist, so like one of my best friends was like, you should start listening to podcasts, and then I did, and I was like, oh, why wasn't I doing this before? And then to kind of go back to mentioning Kevin Smith, the reason I asked that question earlier is that for me, Kevin Smith was like a muse for me when I was like in middle school and like early high school. Like not so much as I got older. I haven't really kept like a ton of tabs on him, but like his whole like Southwest plane fiasco, I wasn't like a huge fan of. But I see both sides of that, and then it's just but yeah, when growing up, like he was a huge inspiration to me because I'm Philly born and raised, and he's right across the river in like New Jersey, and here's a guy that's just like no, like fuck it, like I try to go to school for film and stuff, but they're not teaching me enough, so I'm gonna quit school and I'm just gonna max out my credit cards and like make this movie I care about. And he got very lucky, and right place, right time, had great people behind him, and people loved what he had to say, and what he had to say was great. I'm not and I think he'd be the first to admit it. Not everyone should necessarily do plan of success, but just that whole like when you're growing up and you see famous people and you see Hollywood, it just, especially I feel like, at least from my world and environment, it just feels so distant. And even geographically, like I'm in Philly, they're in LA. Like that's just such a different world. Like that's so not close to a possibility for me. And then basically his story, and then also like I used to work at a comic book store in the mall. I used to work at GameStop in the mall, so like Mallrats was right up my alley. Like Dogma is like one of my favorites. One of my absolute favorites of his, like, and just the way that he talks about religion and Catholicism is just like totally how I was feeling. And yeah, just for that, all of his like, the Jersey trilogy and the couple movies after that, I just like, he just was totally speaking to me. And then again, like just being a local guy that made it was just so like, it's always been inspiring to me. Like I've definitely lost my way and have not always been as creative as I could have been, but that definitely stuck with me.
Yeah, so I'll be 32 this year, and I discovered Kevin Smith, I believe, much like a lot of the movies that everyone should be watching. Like a lot of that stuff was introduced to me from my uncle, who's only like 16 years older than me.
Sure.
So I remember watching this black and white film called Clerks.
Yeah.
At a very young age, younger than I should have been,
Right.
watching it, and I enjoyed it. Like at the time, I was too young to appreciate it, and I know I had seen at least Dogma before I saw Jay and Silent Bob, and Kevin Smith up until I was like, we'll say late, like probably out of high school or just like in 12th grade. So like early 2000s, Jay and Silent Bob was the movie where I was like, Kevin Smith is what it was the universe. Like I was like, Jay and Silent Bob, like they've been in, I know they were in Dogma, and I think they were in Clerks. So like 17-year-old me was like, let me go back and revisit this career. And like, for me, Chasing Amy will always stand out as his best film.
Yeah, no, I agree, 100%.
There's
No, it's like it is without doubt his best film for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
The monologue that Ben Affleck has in the car ride is always what every time I ever was like, oh, I might have to do like a monologue if I go to school for acting, or if I do this thing, they want me to say something. Most recently, I dropped out of college, so like I'm going back now because I feel like I got to set an example for the kids. But I took a public speaking class online. Don't know how that works, but it worked. And one of the things was like, you have to do a monologue, and it has to be X amount of minutes. And like that monologue was like a minute too shy, but that's always been a monologue that I said, it's that monologue. And my other favorite monologue ever, that one and one other one are tied for first, is the Silent Bob Chasing Amy monologue.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought you were going to say before you jumped into the Ben Affleck one, because that's
no, both of them have always spoken to me, and like I've always like so with Clerks, I felt more like Dante, like that's how I feel. Kind of feel like Holden in Chasing Amy. So like the characters that Kevin Smith tends to write that are more geared towards him, or at least Jay and Silent Bob. Well, Dogma and before, like the characters that kind of represent him have always kind of represented me as well.
Yeah.
And a common theme I say on this show is that I'm like the less famous, slightly thinner Kevin Smith. Because I do totally he started podcasting right around when I started podcasting. I used to think that, I should host 5 shows a week. And so like right when he started his podcast network, I was starting mine. And like, it was not like, it was all coincidental and stuff. And then, what I've learned, and the thing that I'll always take away now from Kevin Smith is like, do it for love versus for money. That was like the mindset back in the day. It was like, oh, I'll have a podcast network and I'll make money.
Yeah.
And now like I do kind of restrain myself down to one podcast. I think I co-host another monthly podcast once in a while.
Sure.
But the thing that's more like inspiration, I have it on my phone. The picture, I never delete it. It's a picture that he sent out years ago. I think around 2010. It was a picture of the audience at Carnegie Hall when he played Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
And like the quote is something like, I was a fat kid from Jersey and now I'm doing this. So if I can make it, anyone can.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm feeling like, man, like, why am I just not writing, or why am I not doing this or that? Like, I always kind of look at that picture and say, fucking just, even if it takes you 10 years, just do it. Like, just find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like his big mantra now is like, go out and do a podcast. Like, everyone can do it. It's a free thing to do. It takes money to make a movie. It doesn't take money to do a podcast. And I don't know. He's
it takes money to, movies in general obviously are more expensive than a podcast, but it depends on what you want to do. Like nowadays, like the tools are cheap. Like, like you can, your smartphone will have better resolution than like some of the cameras you can buy at Best Buy, So, if you want to try and make a studio film, that's going to cost millions and millions and millions, but like you can there's YouTube, like there's
Yeah. So today's technology definitely does make making a movie easier. But and with podcasting, what I always say is like, yes, absolutely, it is easy to do a podcast, and everyone has a story, just like he says.
I mean,
but
for the listeners out there, it is easier than making Captain America: Civil War. It is not necessarily easy.
Well, and that's the caveat, is that there is basically after we're sitting down and recording it and even uploading it, really, it's everything else that's involved, depending on what your podcast is.
Yeah.
Like for me, there's a lot of work going into finding people to come on the show.
Sure.
There's a money cost that I think is roughly $25 a month for me to keep everything up and running, which is more than just the podcasting.
You're very,
but yeah. Well, it can be super expensive. I mean, when I say $25 a month, that's just like hosting fees. Like there's an $80 microphone in front of me. That's not including I'm sitting in what I have dubbed the Shedio. It's my shed that is also my studio, and that will eventually, I want to be easily dropping another $1,000 into this over hopefully the next year, so that it will become like a full-fledged studio, and I can do more than just like VoIP interviews. So it can be very expensive. I try to do everything on the cheapest end possible. Hence the reason we're using Zencastr, and not Zencastr is great. Let me put that out there. I don't want the guy saying, "Well, fuck this dude."
Yeah. But
Zencastr is great.
Brought to you by Zencastr.
Yes. Oh God, Zencastr. You know what? I made a plea on Twitter the other day. I'm not big into sponsors, but if there's something that I like, I want them to be a sponsor huge.
Sure.
And there's this thing called Nerd Tea or Nerdy Tea, and it's like a subscription box that you get tea in, and there's nerd themed, it's like Yoda, Master Yoda green tea, and then and then they give you other nerdy things that come with it. So they started following me on Twitter, and I said, and in my race to 5,000 tweets, whenever I near that epic number, my last 10 tweets are always crafted into something. So I wasted one of my tweets on them, and I made sure to point it out because I wanted them to be my sponsor. I don't know if it's going to happen, but this is what I do on Twitter. It's stupid.
Wait, what do you mean you wasted one of your tweets?
Oh, because all right, so I was at 4,990 tweets, or not, maybe 80, whatever the number was. I had 10 tweets to get to 5,000 tweets.
Oh, got you.
So I always, when I'm nearing 6,000 tweets, the last 10 tweets, I'm going to try to craft something ridiculous. My 5,000th tweet was the quote unquote ultimate selfie, where I took a selfie doing duck face blue steel, photoshopped a Triple H's body onto my body, poorly photoshopped thing. Did a 2 filters or something like that, and of course hashtagged it no filter, no Photoshop. And to me, it's it's so stupid. Everyone, all my followers saw it and said, "This fucking asshole." Yeah. But to me, it's just a funny thing of what I said. I'm in my early 30s, so I'm on a cusp of being a millennial, aka not understanding social media.
Yeah.
Twitter's Twitter and Facebook is what I know. Snapchat, I don't know what that means. I don't get it. Sure. That's where I borderline become a grouchy old man and say I'm scared of technology.
It's interesting because I'm not that much younger than you. I'm 30, so it's I watched this great speech from Adam Conover. For people that aren't familiar with his name, he's the guy behind Adam Ruins Everything, which was on Humor and now on True TV. Yeah. And I love his whole thing, being smart and being funny. If I can learn something while I'm laughing, that's just the greatest experience ever in my book. So, he had this great speech that he did at some marketing convention. about how the whole convention was about like marketing and millennials, and he had this great like 25-minute speech about how millennials are bullshit. There's no such thing as a millennial or something, and basically he was just debunking the idea of generations and generational names. Like whatever name we assign to some grouping of birth years is kind of arbitrary, and the only reason people do it is so they can write books about it. But yada yada yada. In any case, it was fun to watch him go down memory lane about how people tried to name our generation, and like at one point, like the one that pseudo stuck for a minute was Generation Y.
I remember that
because the generation before us was Generation X, and it's funny how like we're all considered millennials now, like anyone that's like born 1980 up or whatever. But I wish that they would break us in half. Like I wish that us that were like in our late 20s or like 30s and beyond were Generation Y, and like everyone that was like younger than us, millennials, because it's like, people that are in their early 20s, like at my age of 30, like I still remember going to like elementary school and there was like 4 computers for the whole class or something, or like like what's it like I remember typing on a typewriter. Like I know like I remember my parents like taping a movie off like HBO so they could like, have it, or like
VHS,
there's just like
this magical little box.
Yeah, like VHS, and then just there's just a lot of like I remember in middle school, if I had some after school activity, when I was done, I would dial down the center to get my dad to pick me up, which like no 23-year-old understands that reference. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and just like the whole like calling collect thing. Like, what? You didn't have a cell phone since you were in like 4th grade?
Yeah. That blows my mind. Kids today in elementary school have a cell phone. I look at that and I look at my fiance and say, I hope we don't become those parents. Like I don't like when my kid's 15 and has a job, he'll have a phone. Other than that, he doesn't need one. Yeah,
but it's funny because it's like I feel part of me feels the same way because it's like, oh, I want my kids to have the same experience as me. But then like I could see like the protective parent in me being like, oh, well, I definitely want to like. One, be the cool parent, and if all his friends have cell phones or her, like I don't want him to be left behind. But then at the same time, like, well, I want to get a hold of my child at any point, or at least have a reason, if they came home late and I'm like, hey, why were you past curfew? They could have been like, well, I would have told you if I had a phone, like that whole speech, which you're like, oh man, now I gotta get a
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a bridge I'll cross when I need to. It's kind of his cousin, my son's cousin, my nephew has. I don't think it has service, but it's a phone still, and like because his grandmom got a new one, and he gave it to him. She gave it to him, and so at 4, my son's 4.5, and he goes, "Well, Liam has a phone. Can I have a phone?" And I'm like, "No, you're 4. Why do you need a phone?"
Yeah.
And it's already starting at 4 years old.
But we were like the same way, like I remember being like 1st or 2nd grade. I don't even know how old that is at this point, but it's like that's pretty young. Like I remember being in 1st grade and being lucky enough to have like a Super Nintendo, but like still wanting a Game Boy. You know what I mean? And
okay, you're right.
And like a Game Boy back then was like the kids of today's like phone or tablet or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's valid. Because that was like, it's funny because I was thinking the other day or whenever that like, man, kids today, they don't know what it's like to go on a long car trip and have like really nothing. But like I sat in the back of a car with a Game Boy.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's fun. Like I have that too. Like I remember going to amusement rides with my like parents and stuff and like being proud, like, yeah, like I waited like an hour to ride Splash Mountain, like kids these days could never wait that long, but it's like, yeah, they definitely could. Like they're gonna like they're gonna respond to all these trending topics on Twitter and like crush a few levels of Candy Crush, so.
Yeah. I always wonder like when do I start sounding like the old guy? Because I do like
I think we already have.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think it's now, and it's weird
Yeah.
because I don't feel old. Like I'm 30, I'll be 32. So I don't ever consider myself an adult. I mean, I own a house, I own a car, I have 2 kids. I'm an adult, but like I still play video games on a regular basis. I don't ever okay, not a regular basis, but I still enjoy playing video games when I have a time to. I sit
Sure,
around
sure.
and I write make believe. I sit around and like do this, which I don't feel like is an old man's game. It's definitely like my parents don't sit around doing podcasts.
Yeah, but that's the difference. Is like, everyone is, as much as I just hated on generations, everyone is like a product of the generation. So it's like, yeah, like I'm sure I'll be like, podcasting or playing different Flash games or something or whatever. But it's like, I guess the best way that I can compare it is, my dad when he was in like his 20s, was a huge Philly sports fan. And went to games or like went out to like watch the game, and he played sports with his friends. Like they would play tennis or like bowling or something. And like, literally until this year, he's 63. He like just finally stopped bowling, and not because he can't anymore, but that's because he's now playing pickleball. Like so like for him, like that's like my version of that would be like, oh, I'm done with Counter-Strike. I'm finally playing Halo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, everyone has, because like back when he was our age, there's no Nintendo, there's no Magic the Gathering, there's no podcast, so it's like, and you just get, there's a reason that you enjoy these things. Is it just gives you like this sense of identity, like I will like always be nerdy and like play card games and stuff because it's just like what I grew up on.
It's funny because I just got back into Magic the Gathering again. Like we started playing maybe 2-3 months ago again.
Okay.
My brother-in-law, or soon-to-be brother-in-law, he's like, I think I want to play Magic, and I don't think he ever played, or if he did, it was again when we were like kids.
Yeah.
I played when I was a teenager, and I had cards up into my early 20s that I sold eventually for probably beer money.
Sure.
And then so recently I'm like, well, hey, that was dumb. Like, if I knew back then I was going to play now, I wish I would have kept them.
Yeah,
but
it's so hard. Like, so I cashed out in like 2009, I think.
Sounds about right.
But I was, so I have like a ton of the older cards and stuff, and at the time I thought I was never gonna play Magic again, and I had bought an Underground Sea for $20, and I was selling it to a friend at a discount for $80. So it's just like, that's a no-brainer. Getting 4 times on my money. I don't think I'm ever gonna play again. Then of course, like Godfather 3 style, they fucking pull you back in somehow. And you're just like, shit, that card's now $300, so it's just you can't be like literally anyone that's played Magic has the exact same story as that.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. It's funny actually. My best friend, I don't think he ever sold his cards. He still has them. Okay. But his brother, who is, I always think he's only a couple years younger than us, but he is, I think, like 7 years younger than us or something. And he's just now selling his cards to like, make some investments and stuff, and he's getting like a pretty penny for him. But like, I'm sitting there talking to my buddy about it. I'm like, man, in 7 more years, when he's our age, he's gonna kill himself because he's gonna get back into it. Like, if he's anything like us, he's gonna get back into it. And the thing that
it all depends on what he has too. Like, it's the Magic is an interesting market. Like it's I think like right now is like a weird like bubble on like the singles markets, and I'm not sure that like if he has cards that if he's been getting cards that were current for a while now, 7 years from now, like it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be as dramatic as it was for like
Oh,
you know.
yeah, I don't think he has current cards. Like he still has cards. Like I don't think he's played in years either, and he played when we played. So
Okay.
like he may have been younger than us, but he still played. So he had the cards that I had that I sold off probably about 6 to 7 years ago. But
Yeah,
it's
like, even 6 or 7 years ago is only like World Wake, like a Lara block, like Lorwyn, right? Like when were you playing?
Well, so I sold 6 or 7 years ago, but I was playing years before that and had like I think probably the most recent thing I had at the time was maybe Unglued, which was that weird set.
Yeah.
But Fallen Empire was like the big thing. Fallen Empire and Ice Age were like the two big sets that I had. So they were like late 90s, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, like nothing from. I can't think of anything off the top of my head from like Fallen Empires or Alliances that are or not Alliances. Ice Age are worth like a ton of money.
I have See, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest.
Yeah, like
it's
yeah. Unfortunately, they were not the two to invest in heavily. Not that they were horrible sets. I'm not trying to hate on anyone out there, but yeah, like like the best cards that come to mind to me in Ice Age, like there's two problems. One, they were reprinted in other sets, so
Yes.
that fractures like that splits the stock, and the other like powerhouse cards in that set are like only legal in Vintage and restricted.
Yeah.
So like it's not. Like I think like an Ice Age Necropotence, like there's no way that's worth more than $20, and it's probably only $10.
Man, dude, I thought I was into Magic still. You are like, you're naming things. I'm like, I don't what? Like, I don't remember any of this.
So I used to like have a column for like writing Magic strategy, and I still keep in touch with like the vintage Magic scene.
Okay.
Like I've been playing Magic since like the 4th grade, off and on, and like I used to for like a minute tried to like grind to get on the Pro Tour, and then just wasn't. I got sucked back into that life, and I was just like, this is not for me. Like I need to do something else different with my time. But yeah, like card games have been a huge part of my life. Like I used to work at basically like a specialty store that only, that its focus was trading card games like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon for like 4 years. And then even after I left the store, I still helped them like run events, like events for like where the main event was like 2,000 people. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I like live and breathe card. Like, even though I have not played Magic, I've maybe played Magic once this calendar year.
Okay.
Like I am still my Facebook feed is like Philly comedians and people that I've played Magic with, so it's like I am still very much like on like I know what the spoilers are for like Eternal Masters, and like I'm aware of how my, I guess for lack of a better term, nest egg is doing. And I get really scared sometimes. But yeah, it's
what I've just learned is that I don't want to play you in Magic because I will feel like a complete noob.
No, it's all right. That's the beauty of Magic is that, just to put like the shoe on the other foot, there's like the way that you're feeling about me, there's obviously people that are like hardcore pros or Hall of Fame pros for Magic that I'd be like, oh my God, that guy's clearly better than me. But like, if they only get one land or like mulligan before, then like, you can, there's so many, like, that's what's beautiful about trading card games when they're designed right, is that, if you're very knowledgeable and you're very skillful, in the long run, you will have more wins than your losses and you will be like rewarded. But on any like given day or given match or given game, anybody can beat anybody. And that's what's beautiful about it. That's what keeps everyone playing. That's also what's really frustrating when you take it seriously. And that's why I had to stop playing.
Yeah.
It's like you dedicate like all this time, and you go to the big event, and you just like, oh, today wasn't my day, so like I just spent all this money and just didn't reap the spoils at all. There's so many events where not necessarily with Magic, but like other card games I've played where, a teammate or just somebody else was playing like the right deck. Like if it was, for the listeners that aren't familiar, let's say, because you're allowed to bring your own assembly of cards to play in the event. So let's say if you boiled it down to like a rock, paper, scissors situation, let's say the overwhelming majority of the room was playing rock, and you're like, sweet, I showed up with paper. But the first 3 rounds, I happened to play against scissors. I'm just fucked. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. And my friend can win with paper, and it's like, good. He knew what he was doing, and he picked the thing that we thought was going to do great. But it's like, that's what can be kind of that's what can be really frustrating about it.
Wow, I don't think the beginning half of you talking about Magic, I don't think I've ever heard it put so elegantly. I had a guest on here who so I recently got big into like tabletop podcasting, and thanks to Jeff Stormer, who is part of the Philadelphia Podcasting Society, and also the host of this other podcast called Too Cool for Tabletop, Jason Ashley. Their podcast got me into tabletop more than I've ever been in my life. That's his theory. He's talked about Magic, Jason Ashley, from Too Cool. His theory is that like you start off playing Magic the Gathering, and that leads you into like D&D or other tabletop games, which leads you into LARPing, which eventually leads you down the road to becoming a serial killer. Which is an interesting theory, but it is kind of true, because like I back when I used to play Magic in my high school, I think it was a teacher said, let's start up a D&D group. And like, it didn't pan out. Like it's like me and my buddy joined, and it just like, no one took it seriously, or maybe serious isn't the right word, but it wasn't fun.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm the same way.
So we didn't play. And then years later, I think we tried again, and same thing happened. And then more recently, and we'll say up to probably about a year ago, like my friend started a group, and like boom, they finally found like they finally clicked. And I played in the first round. I played like I wasn't there yet. There was something like whatever happened, like I wasn't ready to play. And getting into Magic, getting into these tabletop podcasting, and really I was a guest on Party of One, and we played this Doctor Who RPG game.
Okay.
And it was so much fun, but also taking serious enough, whatever that means in the world of RPG, that I was like, I want to do this all the time. Mm-hmm. And so like I told my buddy, I was like, hey, I want to play again. Like I think I'm ready to play, and I think my mind's in the right set, and like. And to the point where, like, okay, we had a lot of fun in the session that we played in April, and we recorded it. Like, that's one of the podcasts that I co-host, is that we've recorded a 4-hour session, and we're going to air it monthly. And we had so much fun doing it. It was like, this show will work as a live podcast, my friend. And like, which is like halfway between D&D and LARPing. So I'm nowhere near the serial killer stage yet, but it's
you're on your
D&D.
way.
I'm on my way.
You bought the van at least.
Yes, and I have like so there's this game called Dungeon World that I'm going to start probably another monthly podcast on with a friend. It's gonna be kind of combining like Party of One and then Too Cool, where it's a campaign, but it's only one guest or one player, it's more. Dungeon World promotes storytelling more than D&D does, and it's an interesting system that I'm learning as I read the rule book. But yeah, like I've dove in head first into it. Like it's D&D or just role playing in general is so much fun.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always hated it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've always hated it, which is super interesting because nowadays like doing more acting, just like being like a stand-up or like a variety show performer, and then especially like improv. But yeah, I just can't stand it. Like, and I think it's because it's just like it's too much of like an exercise, and it's not enough of a game for me. Like, I love I'm very much my parents' offspring in the sense that I love competition. Like, I like, and D&D is just it rewards you for like knowing all the rules and like dedicating yourself to being the character, and then like being very cooperative to the narrative. And I remember like in high school, I had, nerdy friends that were in the D&D, and I would try and play with them. And, the dungeon master would like be setting the stage, and in my head, I'd just be like, boring. And like, they're like, like they'd be like, all right, you guys enter this bar. What do you do? And I'm just like, I punch that guy in the face because I just want to fucking roll dice. Like, when do we fight? And that's like the worst way to play D&D ever. That's just, that's why I've always gravitated to like card games or like tabletop board games. There's like more there's board games that are cooperative that I'm okay with, but yeah, in general, I like it's enjoyable for me to like play a battle of wits, whether I win or lose, because like if I win, that's like, sweet, I'm fucking awesome, like I got rewarded for being smart. If I lose, I'm immediately like evaluating like, how did I lose? And then like to me, like, that's a reward because I'll grow in some way, like getting better at that game or like thinking about something, in like a strategic way. So, yeah, that's just. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, to me, that what D&D and tabletop like offer for me is like, hey, this is like something that I decided I also want to get into is improv. And like me and my buddy have talked about like, let's like, and I talked to Garrett about it, and he's like, that's dumb. And I don't know how you feel as either a stand-up or an improv artist, but like we've talked about going to the Philly Improv Theater and taking a class, because like it just would be a really fun exercise to do. And like, to me, that's like where D&D comes, like D&D for me is very much improv. And I don't know. There's that role playing, that improv is what I gravitate to.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so, okay, we let's finally kind of get into you.
I mean, we can keep like, I could talk about games and Magic like all day. Like, we didn't even get into my card game credits, which I was just like itching to talk about. Not really, but kind of. Yeah, I mean, I guess to just like wrap up like the nerdy side of it. Anyone that cares. I was never really that successful at Magic. Like, I won like some local things here and there. Recently, my only accreditations are like in Vintage. Like last year, I placed like top 16 at like Vintage Champs, but yeah, like I've never been on a pro tour. I don't grind like that. I took a long break from Magic and played like other TCGs. For people that aren't familiar, when Magic was like blowing up and like Yu-Gi-Oh was blowing up, and Pokemon was like on the rise again, because like there were new kids playing Pokemon, and then like us as like teenagers were like, yeah, Pokemon's so cool, we love that shit. There was like this golden age of trading card games, or like I guess like a new renaissance where they were releasing new games, and everyone thought the strategy was like, how a game is successful is you be like Magic, you have like a pro tour and you throw a bunch of money away as like prizes. So there were all these like second rate games or like not as popular games were giving like tons of money away. So I got distracted and played a bunch of those. But yeah, it was fun for a while. Like, it was a great excuse to travel. That's in part why like I'm excited about comedy now, is I haven't traveled in a while.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, you would practice with your local team members and friends, and travel to an event here. I've traveled all over the globe to like play and trading card games. Like Yeah, like in the States, I've flown to like California like numerous times.
Oh wow.
I've gone to like Paris for like a invitational world championship before. So yeah, it gets real serious and real intense, and
You are on a way different level than me.
Yeah.
Like not in a bad way. Like that's just like that. I used to travel for work, and it was cool, and I'm glad I did it in my 20s. But like, and I guess it would be cool if I went to like Paris or something. But wow, like I never ever thought about taking Magic that seriously, I guess.
Yeah, and that's like the competitive person in me. Like, so like the analogy that your friend gave, where it's like, oh, you play Magic, and then you play D&D, and then you play LARP, and then you become a serial killer. My path is you're introduced to Magic, then you're grinding to try and make the Pro Tour, then you like work some like basic job where you don't really have a job, and then you're like some pseudo stock trader, like trying to like, you know, make money off margins on like speculating what cards are going to be worth, you know, and then you, I don't know, you kill yourself. I have no idea. I haven't gotten to the final step yet, but yeah, like it's this way like deeper, super competitive, like cutthroaty, like path. Yeah, like the path that your friend described makes sense if you are playing games purely just to have fun.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that was like that into any like kind of trading card game. Like I've known that there's all these world tours and that people do it, and like kind of like going back to what we talked about, how like we're so far outside of Hollywood and that world. Like that's also like that world of like in that equation, you're Hollywood to me, because like that's I've never even thought about that.
That's funny. Yeah, I just got really lucky.
All right, we're going to end the podcast right there this week. Thanks to Brian for coming on the show. He's going to be back next week for part 2 of our conversation. As you can tell, we didn't get into any of his podcasting career with Full Belly Laughs. So we're going to finish up about trading card games and Magic the Gathering, and then we're going to get into a little bit of Full Belly Laughs and a whole bunch of other fun things. Make sure that you check out his website, fullbellylaughs.com. Him on Twitter at FullBellyLaughs. I believe his Instagram is also at FullBellyLaughs. And, you know, it's support it, rate, review, anything you can do to help support that guy. He was a fantastic guest. Loved talking to him. We're working on something to hopefully, you know, cross-promote in the future. So hopefully you'll see me on his show, because you know what? I like to talk and I like to eat. So his podcast, why am I not hosting Full Belly Laughs, for Christ's sake? Anyway, for Everything is Awesome, I'm your host, Kev, and we'll catch you right here on awesomepodcast.com.
Everything is Awesome is produced by Crude Humor Studios. For more information about the podcast, please visit us online at awesomepodcast.com. Or if you're interested in advertising on the show, please email us at advertising@crudehumorstudios.com. Stream and download all episodes on iTunes. While you're there, please consider leaving a 5-star review. If you're a fan of the show, please let us know by following us on Twitter and Instagram at ThatEntertains.